The mining ship Prospector's Dream drifted silently through the asteroid field, its hull scarred by countless micro-impacts. Captain Sarah Chen stared at the scanner readings, her coffee growing cold in her trembling hands. The numbers didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. "Run it again, Marcus," she whispered to her engineer. Marcus Volt's weathered face creased with worry as he recalibrated the sensors. "Same reading, Cap. The asteroid, it's hollow. And there's something massive inside." What they'd found wasn't just another space rock. The asteroid, designated 2157 Delta, contained a structure that defied human understanding. The metal composition was unlike anything in their databases, and energy signatures pulsed from within like a mechanical heartbeat. "Cap, you need to see this," called out Jenny Park, their communications officer. Her voice cracked with barely contained excitement. "I'm picking up transmissions. They're not human." The bridge fell silent except for the ship's gentle hum. Sarah's crew of 5 had been mining asteroids for 3 years without incident. They were nobodies. Outcasts from Earth's corporate mining guilds, scratching out a living in the outer rim. Now they'd stumbled onto something that would change everything. The alien transmissions filled the bridge with haunting melodic tones, beautiful and terrifying at once. As Jenny worked to decode the signals, fragments of meaning began emerging on her screens. "It's a warning system," she breathed. "Captain, this thing, it's been broadcasting for centuries, maybe longer." Dr. Elena Vasquez, their xenobiologist, leaned over Jenny's shoulder. "What kind of warning?" Jenny's face went pale as the translation algorithms processed more data. "Quarantine protocols. It's marking this entire sector as contaminated." Contaminated. With what? Sarah demanded. The answer came from their newest crew member, Tommy Rodriguez, barely 22 and fresh from the academy. His hands shook as he pointed at his geological scanner. "Cap, the asteroid isn't just hollow. There are structures inside, cities. And according to these readings..." He paused, swallowing hard. "They're inhabited." The implications hit everyone at once. First contact wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not by a ragtag mining crew in the middle of nowhere. The United Earth government had protocols, procedures, entire departments dedicated to this moment. Sarah made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. "We're going inside. Captain, we should report this to..." Marcus started. "To who? The corporate suits who kicked us out here? The government that doesn't even know we exist?" Sarah's voice hardened with years of resentment. "We found this. We decide what happens next." As the Prospector's Dream approached the asteroid's hidden entrance, the alien transmissions suddenly changed. The melodic warnings became sharp, urgent. Bursts of data, warning lights flashed across every console. "They know we're here," Jenny whispered. Through the view screen, they watched as the asteroid's surface began to shift and change. Sections slid away to reveal massive docking bays filled with ships that gleamed like liquid metal. The vessels were elegant, deadly, and utterly alien. Sarah gripped her chair as one of the ships, easily 10 times the size of their mining vessel, began moving toward them. "Cap," Tommy's voice was barely audible. "What have we done?" The alien ship filled their view screen, its hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. And then, impossibly, a voice spoke in perfect English. "Welcome, humans. We have been waiting for you for a very long time." The alien ship's docking tube connected to the Prospector's Dream with unsettling precision. Sarah watched through the security feeds as the airlock cycled, her heart hammering against her ribs. Everything about this felt wrong, yet somehow inevitable. The being that stepped through defied every expectation. Tall and graceful, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like oil on water, it moved with predatory elegance. But it was the eyes that made Sarah's blood run cold. Ancient, intelligent, and filled with what looked suspiciously like pity. "I am Ambassador Zale Tharine of the Hegemony Council," the alien spoke, its voice a harmony of tones that somehow formed perfect English. "Your species was not supposed to reach this sector for another 2 centuries. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "How do you know our language? How long have you been watching us?" Zale Tharine's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement. "We have monitored your kind since you first split the atom. Such Enthusiasm for destruction caught our attention. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Sarah forced herself to appear calm despite the growing dread in her gut. "What do you want from us?" "It is not what we want, Captain Chen. It is what we must do." The ambassador's skin deepened to a darker hue. "Your species has been classified as a Category 5 hazard. The quarantine protocols you discovered were specifically created for humanity." "Hazard?" Marcus sputtered. "We're just minors." "Yes," Zaeltherin said softly. "You are just the species that turned splitting atoms into weapons before you learned to properly harness the energy. You are just the beings who wage war while simultaneously reaching for the stars. You are just the race that finds creative ways to kill each other and call it progress." Jenny found her voice. "That doesn't make us monsters." "No," the ambassador agreed. "It makes you something far more dangerous. It makes you unpredictable." Zaeltherin moved to the view screen, gazing out at the stars. "Do you know what happened the last time a species like yours was allowed to spread across the galaxy? The Vorthon Collective consumed 17 star systems before we could contain them. They built weapons from their own bodies, turned their ships into guided missiles, and when faced with defeat, they detonated their homeworld to take their enemies with them." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that your species displays every marker of a galactic-level threat. Your creativity, your refusal to accept defeat, your tendency to turn anything into a weapon." The ambassador turned back to them. "The Council has decided that humanity must be contained to your solar system. Permanently." The silence that followed was deafening. Tommy was the first to break it, his young voice cracking with emotion. "You can't do that. We haven't done anything wrong." "Not yet," Zaeltherin replied. "But you will. It is your nature." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her scientific mind racing. "Show us the evidence. These other species you mentioned. What made them so dangerous?" The ambassador's skin flickered through several colors before settling on a deep purple. "Very well. Perhaps understanding will make acceptance easier." The air in the room shimmered, and suddenly they were surrounded by holographic displays. Star maps, battle footage, and data streams in alien languages filled the space around them. "The Krillian Empire," Zaeltherin began, highlighting a cluster of dead systems. "They learned to weaponize gravity itself. When they realized they couldn't win against the hegemony, they collapsed their own stars to create artificial black holes." More images flashed, species after species that had risen to threaten galactic stability. Each one creative in their destruction, each one ultimately contained or destroyed. "The pattern is always the same," the ambassador continued. "Intelligence, combined with aggression, innovation born from conflict, and the inability to know when to stop." Its eyes fixed on Sarah. "Tell me, Captain, what would your species do if faced with superior force?" Sarah met its gaze steadily. "We'd find a way to fight back." "Exactly." Zaeltherin's skin shifted to a deep red. "The Council convenes in 7 days to finalize the containment protocols. Earth will be surrounded by an impenetrable barrier. No ships in, no ships out. Your species will live and die in your own system, and the galaxy will remain safe." The weight of it crashed down on them. Not just their own fates, but the future of every human being alive. Marcus stepped forward, his engineer's mind working furiously. "What if you're wrong? What if we could prove we're not like those other species?" The ambassador's laugh was like crystal chimes in a winter wind. "How could you possibly prove that, Marcus Volt? Your own history condemns you." Sarah felt something ignite in her chest. Not fear, but defiance. The same stubborn refusal to quit that had driven her family to leave Earth, that had pushed humanity to the stars despite every setback. "Give us a chance," she said quietly. Zaeltherin's expression grew almost sad. "Captain, you do not understand the scale of what you ask. The hegemony controls 3,000 star systems. We have technologies your species cannot even imagine. What could 5 humans in a mining ship possibly do to change the Council's mind?" Sarah smiled, and something in that expression made the ambassador take an involuntary step back. "Hold my beer," she said. The prospector's dream drifted away from the alien station, its crew huddled around the small table in their cramped common area. The holographic data Zaeltherin had provided painted a grim picture of humanity's future, or lack thereof. 7 days, Dr. Vasquez muttered, scrolling through xenobiological profiles of extinct species. In 7 days, they lock away 8 billion people forever. Tommy slammed his fist on the table. It's not fair. We haven't even had a chance to prove ourselves. Fair doesn't matter, Marcus said grimly, studying technical schematics of hegemony technology. What matters is that their ships are 50 times faster than ours. Their weapons can level continents, and they've had 10,000 years to perfect their tactics. Sarah sat quietly, staring at the star charts. Everyone expected her to have a plan, but the truth was terrifying. She had no idea how 5 humans could challenge an empire that spanned the galaxy. Cap? Jenny's voice was small. What are we going to do? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of her daughter back on Mars colony, probably doing homework and dreaming of exploring the stars, thinking of all the humans who would live and die without ever knowing there was a universe full of wonders waiting for them. When she opened her eyes, there was steel in her gaze. We're going to do what humans do best, she said. We're going to be completely insane. She stood and moved to the navigation console, pulling up a 3-dimensional map of the local sector. Zaeltherin said the council meets in 7 days, but he also said something else. They've been watching us since we split the atom. So? Marcus asked. So they know our history, our technology, our tactics. They think they understand us. Sarah's fingers danced across the controls, highlighting points of interest. But there's one thing they don't know about humanity. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. What's that? We're at our most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose. Sarah turned back to her crew, and they saw something in her expression that made their blood quicken. It was the same look their ancestors had worn when they'd crossed frozen oceans to unknown lands, when they'd pointed rockets at the sky and rode controlled explosions into space. Here's what we're going to do, Sarah began. We're going to split up. Marcus, you're taking the ship back toward the inner systems. Send a message to every human colony, every ship, every station. Tell them what's coming. Marcus nodded grimly. What about the rest of you? We're going to the council meeting. The silence that followed was profound. Cap, Tommy whispered. That's suicide. The station where they meet is probably the most heavily defended place in the galaxy. Probably, Sarah agreed. Which is exactly why they won't expect us. Dr. Vasquez was studying the star charts with growing comprehension. The Hegemony Council. Station is in the neutral zone, isn't it? Equal distance from all member worlds to ensure fairness. That's right. And according to these files, it's also completely automated, except during council sessions. Sarah pointed to a cluster of data. Points. No permanent population, minimal defense fleet, maximum security through isolation. Jenny was beginning to understand. You want to crash their party. Not crash it, Sarah corrected. Hijack it. She pulled up more detailed schematics, her engineering background serving her well as she analyzed the station's layout. The council chamber has galaxy-wide broadcast capabilities for transmitting decisions to member worlds. If we could get access to that system, we could address the entire hegemony, Dr. Vasquez breathed. Make our case directly to every world at once. Marcus shook his head. It's impossible. The security systems alone would be designed to stop ships and armies, Sarah interrupted. Not a handful of humans in maintenance suits floating through space. The plan was insane. It violated every rule of physics, probability, and common sense. They would have to disable their ship's life support to avoid detection, drift through the vacuum in nothing but emergency suits, somehow infiltrate a station designed by species with technology centuries beyond their own, and convince an empire of aliens not to imprison their entire species. Even if we get inside, Tommy said. What makes you think they'll listen to us? Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. Because we're going to give them something they've never seen before. Which is? A human who refuses to quit. She moved to the communications console and began composing a message. Marcus, when you reach the inner systems, I want you to send this to every human ship captain, every colony administrator, every military commander you can find. The message was simple, but electrifying. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Prospector's Dream. In 7 days, they plan to cage us. They think they know what humans are capable of. They're wrong. To every human receiving this message, show them who we really are. Show them what happens when you tell a human something is impossible. The coordinates attached will show you where to find us if we succeed. And if we don't, make sure they remember that we tried. P.S. Tell my daughter. Her mom went down swinging. As Marcus prepared to take the ship and spread the word, the remaining crew made their final preparations. They had 3 days to reach the Council Station, infiltrate it, and somehow change the course of galactic history. This is completely insane, Dr. Vasquez muttered as she checked her environmental suit. Absolutely, Jenny agreed, testing her equipment one final time. Tommy looked up from the improvised explosive device he was building from mining charges. Are we really going to do this? Sarah sealed her helmet and moved toward the airlock. Outside, the void of space stretched endlessly, cold and hostile and utterly indifferent to their chances of survival. Yeah, she said. We really are. As the Prospector's Dream accelerated away toward human space. 4 figures in bulky environmental suits pushed off from its hull and began the long, dark journey toward the heart of an alien empire. Behind them, Marcus's voice crackled over the radio one last time. God help us all. Ahead of them, the Council Station waited like a jewel of light against the stars, beautiful and terrible, and completely unaware that humanity was coming to call. The Council Station hung in the void like a crystalline flower, its multiple sections spiraling out from a central hub in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Sarah and her team had been drifting toward it for 18 hours, their suits' life support systems running dangerously low. Heat signatures, Jenny whispered over the comm. Dozens of ships arriving from all directions, through her helmets. HUD, Sarah watched as vessels of impossible design converged on the station. Some looked grown rather than built, others seemed to bend light around themselves, and a few appeared to exist in dimensions her eyes couldn't quite process. Representatives from 3,000 star systems, Dr. Vasquez breathed. We're looking at the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Tommy's voice was tight with fear and wonder. And we're about to break into their meeting with mining equipment and a prayer. They had timed their approach to coincide with the arrival of the largest delegation ships, hoping the sensor noise would mask their tiny heat signatures. So far, it was working. No alarm beacons, no patrol craft turning in their direction. Docking Bay 7, Sarah said, highlighting their target on the shared display. Emergency maintenance airlock. If the schematics are right, it should connect to the service corridors. And if they're wrong, Tommy asked, then we become very expensive space debris. The station's hull loomed before them, its surface covered, in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living things. As they approached the maintenance hatch, Sarah felt a moment of vertigo, the realization that she was about to set foot inside a structure built by minds that had been exploring the stars when humanity was still discovering fire. The airlock cycled with alien efficiency, and suddenly they were inside the most secure facility in known space. The service corridor was utilitarian despite its exotic construction, lined with conduits that pulsed with energy and atmospheric recyclers that hummed with mathematical precision. Life support is... Dr. Vasquez checked her readings. Oxygen-nitrogen. Mix, slightly higher pressure than Earth standard. We can breathe here. They removed their helmets gratefully, taking their first breaths of alien air. It tasted of ozone, and something Sarah couldn't identify. Metal and starlight, perhaps. Which way to the council chamber? Jenny asked, consulting the stolen schematics. Sarah oriented herself using the station's layout. Up 7 levels, then through the administrative section. We'll have to bypass at least 3 security checkpoints. They moved through the station, like ghosts, keeping to the maintenance corridors and service passages. Twice they had to hide as maintenance drones glided past, their sensor arrays sweeping for anomalies. Each time, Sarah held her breath, waiting for alarms that never came. The deeper they went into the station, the more overwhelming it became. Walls displayed real-time feeds from across the galaxy. Star births, the dance of gravitational waves, the migration patterns of space-dwelling leviathans. It was beautiful and terrible, a reminder of how small humanity was in the cosmic scheme. Cap, Tommy whispered, pointing to a corridor junction ahead. Movement! A figure approached, tall, elegant, with skin that shifted through the electromagnetic spectrum. Another species Sarah didn't recognize, wearing robes that seemed to be made of captured starlight. They pressed against the wall, barely breathing, as the alien passed within arm's reach. It paused for a moment, and Sarah's heart nearly stopped as its head turned in their direction. But then it continued on, apparently dismissing whatever it had sensed. "How many species are represented here?" Dr. Vasquez asked once they were clear. "According to the files, over 1,000, Sarah replied. Each one with their own agenda, their own fears, their own reasons for wanting humanity contained. They reached the security checkpoint guarding the administrative levels. Energy barriers hummed with deadly power, and sensor arrays covered every angle of approach. It was designed to stop armies, infiltration specialists, beings with technology beyond human understanding. It was not designed to stop a 22-year-old mining engineer with a talent for creative problem-solving. "Give me 5 minutes," Tommy whispered, pulling out components salvaged from their ship's systems. "I can't disable it, but I might be able to create a feedback loop that'll blind the sensors for about 30 seconds. "That's not much time," Jenny said nervously. "It's enough," Sarah replied. "It has to be." Tommy worked with the focused intensity of someone who knew that failure meant the end of everything. His makeshift device was a jury-rigged combination of human engineering and scavenged alien components. Exactly the kind of impossible hybrid that shouldn't work but somehow did. "Ready," he whispered. "On my mark. Now." They sprinted through the security barrier as sparks flew from overloaded sensors. Alarms should have been screaming, blast doors should have been slamming shut, but Tommy's device held, barely. They were through. The administrative section was eerily quiet, its corridors lined with monitoring stations that displayed the vital signs of entire civilizations. Here, the hegemony kept watch over 3,000 worlds, tracking population movements, resource flows, and potential threats, including Earth. Sarah paused at a display showing the Sol system, her home reduced to tactical overlays and threat assessments. Red warnings pulsed around every human colony, every ship, every orbital habitat. In the eyes of the hegemony, her species was already a cancer to be contained. "There," Dr. Vasquez pointed to an access shaft leading upward. "That should take us to the council chamber level." They climbed through sections of the station that defied human understanding, gravity fields that shifted direction mid-corridor, rooms where time itself seemed to flow differently, passages that existed in folded space-time. Finally, they reached their destination. Through a maintenance grate, they could see into the council chamber itself, a vast spherical room where representatives of 1,000 species sat in impossible geometries. Some floated in energy fields, others existed as pure information, and a few seemed to phase in and out of reality entirely. At the center of it all, Ambassador Zale Theron was presenting humanity's case, or rather, the case for humanity's containment. "Their history speaks for itself," the ambassador was saying, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Warfare, environmental destruction, the weaponization of every discovery. They are barely past the nuclear threshold, yet already they reach for the stars with weapons in their hands." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Sarah felt her heart sink as she realized the depth of the challenge before them. These beings saw humanity as she might see a virus. Dangerous, unpredictable, and ultimately expendable. "However," Zale Theron continued, "there is one final piece of evidence to consider before we vote." The chamber's holographic displays shifted, showing new images that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. Ships were moving throughout human space. Not just military vessels, but mining ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, every human craft that could fly. "In the past 3 days," the ambassador reported, "humanity has received word of our intentions. Their response has been instructive." The displays showed the human fleet converging on a set of coordinates. The same coordinates Sarah had included in her message to Marcus. They were coming. Despite facing impossible odds, despite knowing they couldn't win, humans from across the solar system were coming to join the fight. "As you can see," Zale Theron said, his skin shifting to deep purple, They prove our point. Perfectly. Faced with superior force, they choose war over wisdom. They gather their fleets for a battle they cannot possibly win, rather than accept a reasonable solution to the threat they represent. The Council's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Fear, anger, and grim satisfaction rippled through the chamber as the representatives saw what they interpreted as proof of humanity's inherent dangerousness. Sarah realized with growing horror that her plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of buying them time, Marcus's message had simply provided the Council with the evidence they needed to justify humanity's imprisonment. But as she watched the displays showing her species rushing toward what might be their final battle, she felt something else entirely. Pride. Fierce, overwhelming pride in beings who would cross the vacuum of space to stand together against impossible odds. They might lose. They probably would lose. But they would do it together, and they would go down fighting. Which gave her an idea. Sarah watched the council chamber with growing understanding. The representatives weren't just afraid of humanity. They were afraid of what humanity represented. In a galaxy of ancient, established civilizations, humans were chaos incarnate. "Jenny," she whispered into her comm, "can you tap into the chamber's broadcast system from here?" Jenny was already working, her fingers dancing over a portable interface jury-rigged to alien technology. "Maybe. The encryption is unlike anything I've seen, but the basic principles. Give me a few minutes." Through the grate, they watched as the debate continued. Representative after representative stood to speak, each one adding their voice to the growing consensus. Humanity was too dangerous. Containment was the only solution. The vote was becoming a foregone conclusion. "I'm in," Jenny whispered. "But the moment I activate the broadcast, every security system on this station will know exactly where we are. How long before they reach us?" 2 minutes, maybe 3 if we're lucky." Sarah looked at her team. A young engineer, a xenobiologist, and a communications officer. None of them were soldiers or diplomats or heroes from the history books. They were just people who had refused to give up when the universe told them their species didn't matter. "That'll have to be enough," she said. "Tommy, set the charges at the corridor entrances. If we're going down, we're taking our time doing it." Tommy nodded grimly and began placing explosive devices at strategic points. They wouldn't stop a determined assault force, but they might buy precious seconds. Dr. Vasquez was studying the council members through the grate. "Sarah, look at them. Really look. What do you see?" Sarah focused on the assembled representatives. Ancient beings who had seen civilizations rise and fall, species that had mastered technologies beyond human comprehension, minds that thought in time frames measured in millennia. "I see beings who've forgotten what it's like to be desperate," she realized. "Exactly. They've been safe for so long, they've lost touch with what drives a species to greatness." Dr. Vasquez's eyes gleamed with understanding. "They see our desperation as madness. But desperation is also what makes us innovate, adapt, survive." "Ready," Jenny reported. "Say the word, and you'll be broadcasting to every member world simultaneously." Sarah took a deep breath. This was it. One chance to change the minds of beings who had already decided humanity's fate. One chance to show them what humans really were. Do it. The chamber's holographic displays flickered and changed. Instead of showing the human fleet massing for battle, they now showed Sarah's face as she spoke directly to the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen," she began, her voice carrying to 3,000 worlds simultaneously. "I'm a human being, and I'm here to tell you why you're making the biggest mistake in galactic history." The reaction was immediate. Alarm systems screamed throughout the station as security forces mobilized. In the chamber, representatives leaped to their feet in shock and outrage. But they were also listening. She could see it in their faces. "You think you know what humans are because you've studied our history," Sarah continued. "You see our wars, our mistakes, our tendency to turn everything into a weapon. And you're right, we do all of those things. But you're missing the point." Behind her, she could hear the thunder of approaching footsteps. Tommy's charges would only delay the inevitable. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It's not our weapons or our aggression. It's that we refuse to accept that anything is impossible. You tell us we can't fly, we build wings. You tell us we can't leave our planet, we build rockets. You tell us we can't survive in space. We learn to breathe vacuum and call it home. The first security teams reached Tommy's position. Explosions echoed through the maintenance corridors. But more forces were coming. Right now you're watching our ships gathering for what you think is a hopeless battle. You see it as proof of our reckless nature. But you're wrong about what they're really doing. Sarah pulled up her own displays, showing the human fleet from a different perspective. Look closer. Those aren't warships preparing for battle. Those are rescue ships, cargo haulers, civilian transports. They're not coming to fight you. They're coming to evacuate Earth before you can cage it. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The human fleet wasn't preparing for war. It was preparing for exodus. You see, while you were debating our fate, we were making our own plans. Every human ship capable of long-range travel is out there. Every colony, every station, every orbital habitat has contributed their vessels. Right now, they're loading supplies, medical equipment, and 8 billion human beings. Dr. Vasquez had been right. The aliens had forgotten what desperation could accomplish. They had expected humanity to either submit or fight. They hadn't considered the third option. We're leaving, Sarah announced. All of us. Every human in. The solar system is boarding those ships. We're going to pack up our entire civilization and find somewhere else to live. Because that's what humans do when you tell us something is impossible. We find another way. The security forces had breached the inner perimeter. Sarah could hear weapons charging, orders being shouted in a dozen alien languages. You want to contain us? Go ahead. Contain an empty solar system. We'll be out there in the dark between the stars, building new homes on worlds you've never heard of, turning asteroids into cities, making the impossible happen one day at a time. Ambassador Zale Theron had reached the chamber's communication console and was frantically trying to cut the transmission. But Jenny had learned more about alien technology in the past 3 days than most beings learned in a lifetime. We're not asking for your permission anymore, Sarah continued. We're not begging for your approval. We're just telling you what's going to happen. Humanity is leaving the cradle, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. The security teams were almost through the final barrier. Sarah could hear plasma cutters working on the corridor walls. But here's the thing about humans. We don't hold grudges forever. Someday, when you're facing a problem that seems impossible, when your ancient wisdom and superior technology aren't enough, you'll remember us. And when that day comes, we'll be there. She looked directly into the camera, speaking not just to the Council, but to every being on every world across the galaxy. Because when the universe tells humans that something can't be done, we have a saying, hold my beer. The wall exploded inward as security forces breached their position. Energy weapons lit up the maintenance corridor as Sarah's team made their final stand. But the damage was already done. The transmission was complete. Across 3,000 worlds, billions of beings had heard humanity's declaration of independence. The cage was open, and the bird had already flown. As consciousness faded under the stun weapons of the security teams, Sarah's last thought was of her daughter on one of those evacuation ships, heading out into the unknown with the rest of humanity. They were free. Sarah woke to the gentle hum of medical equipment and the sensation of artificial gravity pulling her toward an unfamiliar floor. Her head throbbed, and her mouth tasted like copper and ozone. As her vision cleared, she found herself in what appeared to be a detention cell, but one designed with surprising comfort. Across from her, Dr. Vasquez was already awake, sitting, with her back against the wall and watching their surroundings with scientific curiosity. Tommy and Jenny lay on nearby beds, still unconscious, but breathing steadily. How long? Sarah asked, her voice rough. 6 hours, according to the chronometer, Dr. Vasquez replied. Our hosts have been quite considerate, all things considered. The cell's transparent wall offered a view of the detention facility, and beyond it, the council station's observation deck. Through the massive viewport, Sarah could see something that made her heart race. Ships. Thousands upon thousands of ships, stretching out in all directions like a metallic constellation. Human ships of every size and design, from massive colony, transports to tiny personal craft, all drifting in formation around the station. My God, Sarah breathed. They actually did it. They did more than that, Dr. Vasquez said, pointing to a nearby display screen. According to the news feeds I've been watching, the evacuation was 97% complete before the hegemony could react. 8 billion humans, gone in less than a week. The scope of it was staggering. In the time it had taken the Council to debate humanity's fate, the species had simply left. The greatest migration in human history, carried out with the kind of desperate efficiency that only came from knowing there was no other choice. Jenny stirred, sitting up with a groan. Please tell me that wasn't all a dream. No dream, Sarah said. Take a look. Jenny moved to the viewport and gasped. The human fleet was even more impressive up close. Not just ships, but entire structures. Asteroids that had been hollowed out and fitted with engines. Space stations that had been converted into generation ships. Orbital habitats riding under their own power. Where will they go? She whispered. Everywhere, Dr. Vasquez replied. That's the beauty of it. They can't predict our movements because we don't know ourselves. Some will head for the galactic rim, others toward the core. A few will probably try to reach other galaxies entirely. Tommy finally woke, looking around in confusion before the memory returned. Did we win? Before anyone could answer, the cell's barrier deactivated. Ambassador Zale Tharan entered, his skin cycling through colors Sarah had never seen before. Patterns that suggested deep confusion, and something that might have been respect. Captain Chen, he said formally, the Council wishes to speak with you. Sarah stood slowly, testing her balance. Are we prisoners? That remains to be determined. The ambassador's expression was unreadable. Your actions have created complications. They were escorted through the station's corridors, past security checkpoints and administrative areas, finally arriving at a smaller chamber adjacent to the main council hall. Here, a select group of representatives waited, the senior members of the hegemony's governing body. One of them, a being that appeared to be made of living crystal, spoke first. You have disrupted the order of 10,000 years. Good, Sarah replied without hesitation. Your order was built on fear. Another representative, this one resembling a gas cloud held together by magnetic fields, pulsed with agitation. Do you understand what you have done? Your species is now scattered across the galaxy without our protection, without our guidance. Without your leash, you mean? The crystal being chimed with what sounded like laughter. You speak of leashes to beings who have preserved galactic peace for millennia. Peace through oppression isn't peace, Dr. Vasquez interjected. It's just delayed conflict. Ambassador Zale Tharan stepped forward. The Council is divided. Some members wish to pursue your fleets and force compliance with the containment protocols. Others, he paused, his skin shifting to a thoughtful blue. Others are reconsidering our approach entirely. A new voice entered the conversation. Ancient, weary, but carrying tremendous authority. The speaker was unlike anything Sarah had seen, existing, as much in dimensions her eyes couldn't perceive as in normal space. I am Elder Karethmon of the First Assembly, the being said. I have witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, and I have never seen anything quite like what your species accomplished in the past week. Sarah felt the weight of eons in that voice. What do you mean? The evacuation of Earth was not merely a logistical achievement, the Elder explained. It was an act of collective will that defies our understanding of species behavior. 8 billion individuals, acting in perfect coordination without central command, abandoning their homeworld rather than accept limitation. The gas cloud representative pulsed again. It proves they are even more dangerous than we believed. Or, Elder Karethmon continued calmly, it proves they are something we have not encountered in our long history. A species that chooses growth over safety, exploration over security, possibility over certainty. Through the chamber's displays, they could see the human fleet beginning to move. Not all at once, but in small groups, each choosing their own direction, their own destination. Within hours, they would be scattered across light years of space, impossible to track or contain. You have created chaos, the crystal being observed. Sarah smiled. We've created freedom. The same thing, from our perspective, Ambassador Zaeltherin admitted. Order requires predictability. Your species is fundamentally unpredictable. And that terrifies you, Jenny said, understanding dawning in her voice. You're not afraid of our weapons or our aggression. You're afraid of our potential. Elder Kirithmon's approval resonated through dimensions Sarah couldn't name. The young one sees clearly. We have grown comfortable in our certainty, secure in our knowledge of what is possible. Your species represents the unknown, and the unknown is the only thing that can truly threaten those who believe they have seen everything. The debate continued for hours as representatives argued humanity's fate. Some wanted to pursue the evacuation fleets with military force. Others proposed economic sanctions or diplomatic isolation. A few suggested simply ignoring the human diaspora and hoping it would burn itself out in the darkness between stars. But Sarah could see in their faces, or what passed for faces among such diverse beings, that something fundamental had changed. The certainty was gone. For the first time in millennia, the hegemony faced a situation they couldn't control or predict. What happens now? Tommy asked during a brief recess. Ambassador Zaeltherin's skin had settled into a pattern Sarah had never seen. Resignation mixed with something that might have been hope. Now we discover whether 10,000 years of peace has made us wise or merely comfortable. As the council reconvened for their final deliberation, Sarah watched through the viewport as the last of the human ships disappeared into hyperspace. Somewhere out there, her daughter was seeing stars she'd never imagined, breathing air on worlds that didn't yet have names, becoming part of something larger than any single planet could contain. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone had expected. The motion to pursue and contain humanity failed by a narrow margin, not because the council had suddenly embraced human values, but because they couldn't agree on how to handle a species that refused to follow any known pattern. The human diaspora will be monitored but not intercepted, Elder Kirithmon announced. Their expansion will be observed but not constrained, and perhaps, in time, we will learn whether chaos and order can coexist in the same galaxy. As the council dispersed, Ambassador Zaeltherin approached Sarah one final time. Your ship has been repaired and refueled. You are free to go. Just like that? Just like that. His skin shifted to what Sarah had learned was amusement. After all, what would be the point of imprisoning 4 humans when 8 billion others are already free? Sarah looked at her crew, her friends, her fellow rebels against the impossible. They had done something that would echo through galactic history. But more than that, they had given their species the greatest gift of all, the chance to discover who they could become among the stars. There is one condition, the ambassador added. The council wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. Someone will need to serve as your species' representative. Sarah considered the offer, a chance to build bridges between humanity and the galaxy's established powers, to ensure that misunderstandings like this never happened again. But that wasn't who she was. She was an explorer, not a diplomat. Find someone else, she said. We've got a galaxy to explore. As the prospector's dream undocked from the council station, Sarah's crew looked ahead toward the infinite darkness of space. Somewhere out there, humanity was writing a new chapter of its story, not as subjects of an ancient empire, but as free beings carving their own path among the stars. Behind them, the hegemony struggled to adapt to a galaxy that had suddenly become less predictable. Ahead of them lay adventures they couldn't imagine and challenges that would test everything it meant to be human. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today, they were free. 1 year later, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of New Horizon Station, watching as the latest batch of human-built ships prepared for departure. The station itself was a marvel of human engineering, constructed from hollowed-out asteroids and powered by fusion reactors that pushed the boundaries of known physics. It shouldn't have been possible to build something like this in just 12 months. But then again, humans had been making the impossible routine for the better part of a year. Status report, she said into her comm unit. Marcus Volt's voice crackled back from the engineering section. All systems green, Cap. The new quantum drive design is holding steady at 97% efficiency. We should be able to reach the Andromeda relay point in half the time the computer models predicted. Sarah smiled. After their adventure at the council station, Marcus had rejoined the crew permanently, bringing with him detailed plans for technologies that human refugees had reverse-engineered from salvaged alien components. The innovations, coming out of human settlements across the galaxy, were staggering. Not just copies of existing tech, but entirely new approaches that no one had thought to try. "Any word from the outer colonies?" she asked. Dr. Vasquez's voice joined the conversation from the research lab. The Tau Ceti group has successfully terraformed 3 previously uninhabitable worlds using techniques the hegemony considered theoretically impossible, and the deep space expeditions have made contact with 17 new species, most of them non-hegemony aligned. 17? Sarah raised an eyebrow. That's 3 more than last week. Apparently, the galaxy is a lot more crowded than the hegemony. I wanted anyone to know, Jenny added from the communications center. Turns out there are thousands of species that were never invited to join the big club. They're very interested in meeting the upstarts who told the council where to stick their containment protocols. Through the viewport, Sarah could see the fruits of humanity's great diaspora. Ships built in styles that borrowed from a dozen different engineering traditions, space habitats that defied conventional physics, and people, millions of people who had chosen the uncertainty of the unknown over the safety of their cages. Not all of them had survived. The first year of the Exodus had been brutal, with entire colony ships lost to equipment failures, navigation errors, and the simple hostility of deep space. But for every failure, there had been 10 successes. For every colony that didn't make it, 3 more had thrived beyond anyone's wildest expectations. "Incoming transmission," Tommy announced from his position at the sensor array. Well, you're not going to believe this." The main display lit up with a familiar face, Ambassador Zaeltherin, but his appearance had changed dramatically. His skin, once shifting through predictable patterns, now displayed chaotic swirls of color that seemed almost human in their unpredictability. "Captain Chen," he said, and Sarah could hear something new in his voice. Excitement. "I hope this message finds you well." "What's he so happy about?" Marcus muttered. "The council has asked me to inform you," Zaeltherin continued, "that your species' expansion has had unexpected consequences." The display changed to show star charts of hegemony space. But these weren't the neat, orderly territories Sarah remembered from their first encounter. Trade routes now zigzagged in seemingly random patterns. Exploration. Missions were departing for regions of space that had been ignored for millennia. Most shocking of all, several member species had actually withdrawn from hegemony space entirely, choosing to establish independent colonies. "Your chaos, it seems, is contagious," the ambassador said, his skin cycling through colors that suggested amusement and wonder. "For 10,000 years, we maintained order through predictability. But your example has reminded us of something we had forgotten: the joy of discovery." The transmission continued with updates that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. The rigid caste systems of the hegemony were breaking down as individuals chose to pursue paths their species had abandoned centuries ago. Ancient technological stagnation was giving way to innovation as beings who had grown comfortable with impossible suddenly began asking, "What if?" Most remarkably, several council members had formally requested to establish trade and cultural exchange programs with human settlements. "The Corellian Assembly wants to learn human engineering techniques," Zaeltherin reported. "The Vorthon Collective is interested in our agricultural innovations. And the Zephyrian Empire." He paused, his colors shifting to what Sarah had learned indicated deep amusement. "The Zephyrian Empire has formally adopted the human phrase, 'hold my beer,' as their new motto for impossible projects." Sarah burst out laughing, startling her crew. The image of the galaxy's most uptight species adopting human slang as their rallying cry was too perfect to be real. But it was real. All of it was real. "There is one final matter," the ambassador concluded. "The council has voted to formally revoke all containment protocols regarding humanity. You are now recognized as a full galactic civilization with all attendant rights and privileges." The message ended, leaving Sarah's crew in stunned silence. "So," Tommy said finally, "we're officially not criminals anymore?" "Better than that," Dr. Vasquez said, studying the diplomatic files attached to the transmission. "We're officially impossible." Sarah moved to the communications console and began composing a response. It was time to let Zyltheron know what humanity had been up to since leaving their solar cradle. "Ambassador," she began, "thank you for the update. You'll be pleased to know that human settlements are thriving across 17 sectors. We've established trade relationships with 43 non-hegemony species, developed new terraforming techniques that can make garden worlds out of gas giants, and last month, a human team successfully opened a stable wormhole to the Magellanic Clouds." She paused, grinning at the reaction she knew this would provoke. "Oh, and we've started a small project to map and explore the regions of space beyond the galactic rim. Early reports suggest there are entire civilizations out there that make the hegemony look like newcomers. We thought you might be interested in meeting them. Sending a copy of our star charts and an invitation to join the next exploration mission. Fair warning though, we can't guarantee your safety. The technology we're using shouldn't work according to known physics, and there's a non-zero chance we'll accidentally discover something that revolutionizes our understanding of the universe." She looked around at her crew, her family, and saw the same expression on all their faces, the look of people who had found their purpose among the stars. "In other words," she concluded, "it's going to be a perfectly normal Tuesday. Hope to see you out there. Chen out." As the message transmitted toward Council space, Sarah turned, back to the viewport. New ships were launching every day, carrying humans and their alien allies toward destinations that didn't yet exist on any map. Behind them, the hegemony was slowly learning to embrace the chaos that humanity had introduced to their ordered galaxy. And ahead of them? Ahead lay the infinite possibility of the unknown. Tommy joined her at the viewport, now a veteran explorer despite his young age. "What's next, Cap?" Sarah smiled, watching as a ship powered by impossible physics disappeared into a fold in space-time, carrying a mixed crew of humans and aliens toward a destination that existed only in their imagination. "Next," she said. "Next, we show the universe what happens when you tell a human something can't be done." "And if the universe doesn't want to listen?" Sarah's grin was sharp as starlight and twice as bright. "Then we'll just have to hold its beer." Epilogue. 50 years later. The Galactic Historical Archive contains millions of documents chronicling the rise and fall of civilizations across known space. But tucked away in a seldom-accessed section is a simple report filed by a junior archivist of the Hegemony Council. The report, entitled Linguistic Evolution in Post-Contact Galactic Society, notes an interesting phenomenon: the widespread adoption of certain human phrases across multiple species and star systems. The most common, appearing in over 3,000 languages across 47 different biological classifications, is a simple three-word phrase that has become synonymous with attempting the impossible. "Hold my beer." The report notes that this phrase is typically uttered just before someone attempts something that conventional wisdom deems impossible: terraforming a black hole, building a city inside a star, or opening a stable wormhole to another dimension. The success rate of projects initiated with this phrase, the report notes with scientific bewilderment, is significantly higher than statistical models predict. The archivist concludes with a note that would have been unthinkable before humanity's exodus. It appears that the act of declaring something impossible may, paradoxically, increase the likelihood of its successful completion. This researcher recommends further study of the human effect on galactic probability matrices. At the bottom of the report, someone had added a handwritten note in flowing script. "Some things can't be quantified. Sometimes, you just have to have faith in the impossible. ZT." And in the margins, in a different hand entirely, someone had scrawled the words that had become the unofficial motto of the new galactic age: "Hold my beer." The universe, it seemed, was finally learning to listen.